Dates, models, guest list. Just do your best, darling.
Thank you, Eddie. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first live broadcast I've ever done. I have to admit, I'm not very good with technology. The last time I used a vibrator, I'm actually still looking for it. So, I was thinking about it just before I came on. I thought, wouldn't it be ironic if it made an appearance during the show? I mean, that would be something, right? Wait a minute. No, that's not it. No, that's not it. Anyhow. I'd like to welcome everyone who's here. I'm really glad that you decided to join me for this. Now, I've got to admit, I'm going to be honest right now. Sorry about that. I've been very confident about this the whole time, and I thought this would be fine. And I woke up this morning, and I'm actually, it struck me, and I'm a little bit nervous. So please bear with me. That's all it sort of got to me. And I thought maybe this idea of a build-up and all that, so I'll be fine. I says, maybe not. But anyhow, we'll start. Okay. What's this about? Okay. There was a show, if I can make an analogy, I'm going to be revealing this secret that I've lived with for a very long time, but it's actually part of, I want to do a show which is not necessarily about revealing secrets, but actually, dealing with the shadowy aspects of life, but with a specific, focus on gay men, because that's what I know about. But not just, it'll be LGBTQ plus anyone really. This show is really about the secret that you've harbored maybe for a really long time. And that's available to anyone, right? That no one, that's beyond gender, sexuality, race, whatever. This is something that everyone can relate to. What I'm going to talk about is it's actually quite difficult, right? The very first time I ever spoke about this was November 6th, when I broke up with Adam. You might hear me, Adam is my ex. I'll be mentioning him quite a bit during this, I imagine. But that was the very first time I actually said it to anyone. Before that, no one knew. And I have told, so that you know, where is it? So that you know, all the relevant parties have been informed about this. So I'm not coming on here bamboozling, anyone. Everyone who's affected by this secret has knowledge of it, and have been very kind actually, but about it all, but have been rather stunned by it, because what I'm trying to say is that it has been a deception that I've lived for a very long time, for 30 years, very long time. And if I can quickly, if you want to know what it's about, just in short, there was a show. This isn't the secret anyway, exactly, but I'm using an analogy here. There was a show with Jay Lagaya last year, I think it was, about adults who are my age, I'm 50, who couldn't read, right? And this is a phenomenon. This isn't the secret, by the way, but I actually really relate to that situation and the gravity of this secret, the secret shame. These people were really brave. They went on national TV, kind of not unlike I'm making a broadcast, making it public. They went on national TV to reveal something very personal, something that they'd hidden. And it's interesting, around the same time that this developed with me, which was, I was about 10 when this started. It's a long journey. It began as one thing and it turned into something else. It turned into something else. I'm going to take you on quite a journey here, but anyhow, those people who, fell through the cracks and, for various reasons, and each of them had a different, all paths lead to Rome, but each of them had a different way in which they got to this point in their life. What was I saying? Each of them had a different path. Yeah. But it all started when they were young, and then it sort of snowballed. And the way I relate to it is this secret that they harbored, and they were really ashamed. I mean, you're an adult. It's something that everyone expects that you can do. They spend their whole life shaping their lives around this very shameful thing. And they become quite ingenious in how they managed to, they passed tests. I don't know how they did it. They managed to pass tests without being able to read. Sort of get through school and then do something else and just be able to fake it or whatever. But it gets to the point where it becomes so burdensome that, that they have to, make a choice. And it's very interesting because that is the definition of courage. It's not an absence of fear. It is actually, you decide that there is something in your life that is more important than fulfilling or indulging the fear that you have. You know? That's sort of what happened, well, sort of what happened with me. But up until my 50th birthday, which was in October, I was still trapped by this secret. I was still like those people who were still pretending that they couldn't read, or they could read and they couldn't. And on that show, it's very interesting, and that's kind of what this is going to be like. They went public, and in doing so, they let everyone know what was going on. But the arc of that show was about, you know, they learned how to read and they graduated and there was a happy ending. So if you're wondering, this isn't just like me saying, isn't it terrible what's happened to me? There is a happy ending here, because the point of this is actually me releasing, I'm releasing the grips that this secret has had on me for 40 years, 30 years. It changed. It started when I was 10. It became something else in my 20s, became something else in my 30s and 40s, up until I was 48. But this, and the first time I ever said it was Adam. So in 4 months, I've gone from, you know, telling one person. I have to admit that when I told him, I was really nervous, and I'd never told anyone before, and I really had to work myself up into a bit of a frenzy. And I was using meth at the time, and we didn't slam, and but I was smoking it like crazy, you know, just trying to get, because it gives you false confidence, right? It's like coke, right? You know, remember when Eddie was playing ping pong when she came out, you know, playing like that. So I was doing a lot of meth at the time to give me the confidence to be able to say, this time, you know, or what have I got? I've got a cup of tea, but that's the only tea that I'm using. I'm not really using anything else. The other thing is, yeah, I'd just like the chance. I'm not going to interact with the comments yet, maybe at the end, because it's kind of like dawned on me, this is going to be trickier than what I thought. So again, I sort of ask people to just bear with me. I will look at it at the end, but this is tricky. This is going to be very difficult for me to spit out. So I'm just going to try and do that first, and then afterwards, if we have time, I'll look at the comments. But I have a feeling that people may want to actually ask some questions, and I might do a follow-up on this. We'll see how it goes. So what's this about? All right. So this, what happened with me, there was an article that I wrote called The Cinebrinks versus the Rest of the World. And that's really, my idea behind that was actually just to write that, which is the preface for what happened. And then what I'm going to say now is actually going to write it and put it up. But this is the sort of thing that I would actually prefer to say face to face. This is what I've done with everyone else, with the exception of one person, but that's because I couldn't get to see them face to face. So I wrote to them. But everyone else, it was a phone call also with someone else. So this is the kind of thing that I felt like this is the thing you have. It's like breaking up with someone. You need to sort of do it face to face. I don't know. I sort of feel that way. So what happened? Yeah, Cinebrinks versus the Rest of the World. That's, if you haven't read it, it's in the pin section of my Facebook page. And that was when we were attacked when we were children. I was reading on Facebook just recently. There was a guy, I forgot his Dave. He had a home invasion just yesterday, and I wrote something underneath because it really shocked me and it just brought me back. It was quite, serendipitous that thing. Well, it came up in my feed, and I hope you're well, by the way, Dave, if you're watching this. And I said, you need to attend the psychological the damage that this does, because I was talking from experience. Now, what happened to us? I was 9 or 10. I think I was 9. My sister was 11. My brother was 13, right? We had just come back from fishing, and it was about 11 o'clock in the morning. And there were 2 people sitting on the seawall. We live on the water. We live in a place called Woronora in the southern suburbs. And we live next to a boat shed that that hires boats, and at the time was operating legally, selling meat pies and sort of confectionaries, whatever. Anyhow, these people bought a pie. They were sitting on a seawall, and our house was right up next to the fence. Basically, they were eating their meat pie on our property about 20 centimeters from our house. And it was really weird. We came home. We saw these people. My father's just said to my brother and I, so just tell them that this is private property. Could they eat somewhere else? So fair enough. So we went over. Luckily, my brother was the one who spoke, because he said, and my brother's very polite. He said, "Excuse me, this is private property. Do you mind eating your meat pie somewhere else?" The guy turned around and punched my brother in the chest really, really, really hard. I was standing right next to him. I was absolutely shocked. I just thought that, they would just get up and leave. I couldn't believe it. It was a racist attack. It was accompanied with "fuck off wogs this, fuck off wogs that." If you don't know what a wog is, it's a pejorative term that's used. Every country has their own, racial slurs, right? I don't have to say them, but that's the one in 1981. It was that was the one that that's what we were because we were ethnic. If you don't know, the Sutherland Shire is where the Cronulla riots happened. And if in the 90s, and to be honest, that was nothing more than the fulfillment of the racism that's around in this area, particularly at that time. It's better now. It is better now. I think more correctly, it's monocultural in that it's like everyone's the same. Everyone's white Anglo-Saxon, and if you're not, you really stood out, and they didn't like it. They made it very clear. Anyhow, so what happened? These guys. They punched my brother and told us to fuck off. So anyhow, a big fight broke out. My father, and anyone who saw their kid, 13-year-old boy, being punched by a man, and he punched him like you would punch an adult. This is the thing. He punched him so hard that my brother fell back. He stopped. I thought he was going to die. He was winded. And I was just in shock. There was a big fight. My father took on the guy, and the woman was bashing my mum. They were bashing each other, right? It was full on. There was a crowd that formed in the boat shed. They were watching, and then there's a park across the river, and they were watching too. I was standing in the doorway just crying. I mean, this was just horrible. I just couldn't believe it, what was happening. Anyhow, after it was done, we called the police. There was a report that was made. This was the beginning of a social anxiety. This was the germination, the seed of a social anxiety that I developed. I think it's called anthropophobia, which is a fear of people and fear of being judged. And really what it was all about was, it's the safety of your home being attacked. I felt safe in my home up until that point. But these people, it's like a home invasion. That's why I kind of related it to what Dave was saying. But I was a kid when this happened. I was 9. And it was a little bit too overwhelming for me at the time. This whole thing was complicated by the fact that, let's just get rid of that. This whole thing was complicated by the fact that, when I was younger, I think my parents thought that I was precocious as a child. And I think that, I used to counsel them, to be honest. It's their marriage counseling by the time I was 10. I could sort of see what was going on. And I said, he's trying to say that, but you're hearing this. He's trying, And I think that my parents weren't very good when it came to emotional care for us. We actually took care of them. We always have. And even as children, we did. And so what happened was, of course, after this fight and all that, I was left, there was no post-care, there was no aftercare. I was left to deal with it myself, right? And any kid who deals with it as a severe trauma, any kid who has to deal with a trauma by themselves, it's not going to work out well. It never does, right? This is something actually maybe people can think about with their own lives. I mean, I'm not the only one who had a trauma that happened to them when they were younger. I think it happens to a lot of children in different ways. With gay men in particular, I think it's the fear of being rejected. That idea growing up, there's the secret that's inside of you, and the secret fear of being rejected by your parents, by your family, if you have brothers and sisters, by extended family, friends, or whatever. When you're a kid and you have to deal with that, and that's a constant fear that's around. It's a very difficult thing to try and deal with, and you develop different, ways of dealing with that as it goes on. But with me, I developed into a social anxiety called anthropophobia, fear of people, fear of being judged. So what happened after that? I remember going back to school and some girl in my class told me off about it, which I thought was incredible. I said, excuse me, we were doing nothing. There's a lot more to this story. Where we lived, it was very clear that we weren't welcome. And again, I'm going to say it was the racism that was around, or the xenophobia maybe is the better term. It's a fear of what is foreign. We weren't anything like these people. We didn't look like these people. We had a strange last name. We kept to ourselves. And to be honest, we were different. We were, first generation migrants often the kids become overachievers because it's a very typical story. It was in Tiger Mom. It's like the kids are sort of driven to success because their self-esteem, they get their self-esteem from that, right? Doing well. And we were these annoying kids who were good at everything, right? And I've got to be honest, my brother even says it, that the racism that he experienced when he was younger in Woronora and elsewhere really drove him to greater success. It was something that drove him. But with me, the way I experienced it, it made me smaller. It created, I started to create a cage of fear around me that imprisoned me and got worse and worse as I got older. It was a really good job. The particular phobia that I have, a fear of people and a fear of being judged, is one that it has a particular kink in it that makes it very difficult to do anything about, because my problem as it developed was I couldn't tell anyone. That's the fear, right? Telling a stranger or a therapist, a counselor, a teacher, my parents, even anyone, what was going on, that was the fear itself. And I know that no one likes to make themselves vulnerable, but this is like the specific fear that I had and really kept me stuck where I was and it got worse and worse and worse. It was like a cancerous cell that just started dividing, growing and getting bigger until I didn't know what to do with it anymore. So what happened? And also was made worse by, we had neighbors who always hated us. My parents became more aggressive as a result of that attack and were sort of digging their heels in, which I think is fair enough. Like, they wanted us to leave. Everyone felt that we shouldn't be there, and they made it very clear. And we thought, fuck you. My parents became more aggressive, and the neighbors and my parents always had fights. It was a lot of fights. And the thing about it all was they didn't have to deal with the fallout. They could fight with them, come back to the house, and they'd be fine. The children, I went to local school. I had to deal with their children, with other kids, with them sometimes at functions. Like we were at the front line. They didn't have to deal with the fallout of their aggressiveness. We did, the kids did. This just made it worse for me. I got really scared of the neighbors when I was a kid. I would deliberately not leave the house when I thought they were there. I knew their timing, and I would just, avoid them at all costs. I remember there was one incident where I went to the kitchen to get out something, and the window wasn't open. The curtains were drawn. They were normally closed. And when I looked across, there was someone at the boat shed looking in. I felt like they were in the house. I ducked. I remember having a really severe panic attack where I just hid. And it wasn't just that. I would never answer the door. I would run. I was scared. I was scared of anyone coming to the house. I wouldn't make phone calls to strangers. I always got my brother and my sister to do it. It's pretty much like those, like I was saying about that show where you can't read, and how you find ways in which you get other people to do stuff for you or whatever. I was sort of doing that to avoid. It's avoidance, where you could avoid seeing or dealing with strangers. It got worse and worse, basically, to the point where I was just living in my room and hardly ever went out. Everyone around where I live knew this. I had an altercation with the neighbor about 3 years ago. I made it up with her, actually, so I'm just going to say this. And she kept saying, "Oh, you go back into your room and you hide." She's making fun of me. As everyone knows that there's something wrong with me in terms of being. Until recently, I always stayed in my. I never went. I avoided, making any kind of public sort of thing, which is why this is quite a big deal for me. And it is, in many ways, the end point of, like, this is the release. This is the final release. And that's sort of the reason why I'm doing it. But so what happened was, okay, so my anxiety got worse and worse. And so I went through high school, and I hated high school. And then I got to university. I really enjoyed uni. I wanted to go into a creative field. I think I have a really creative heart. There's a lot of, it's like an engine that never runs out. It comes easy to me and I enjoy it. It made sense. But to go down in a creative field, you really need to have, a bit of chutzpah, for want of a better word. You need to be able to put yourself out there and have your work judged for a start. And also sort of sell yourself a bit and sort of, ask people for favors and whatever. I just had no confidence. And I just even though I felt like I could do this, I just didn't. I was shot by that stage. I just couldn't do it. So I didn't go down. I did my I did an honors year that was I did on queering cinema, which was well received, and then I decided to go to I'd study law. So I did a law degree. I thought, all right, I'll go down this path and see. This is the traditional, make a career, or whatever. But I really didn't want to do it. My heart wasn't in it, and worse than that, my fear, my anxiety, my anthropophobia was rearing its ugly head again because this was part of the problem. The fear that I had, so I never saw a doctor, I never told anyone, but it also interfered in ways of, like, for example, job interview. Job interview is exactly what I feared. It was going up to a stranger and having, getting in their energy and having to basically have myself judged. That was the fear. And I would avoid that at all costs. It really was, I was scared. I was really, really scared. And anyone who has a phobia will know it's like just you're scared of the panic attack and the panicky kind of symptoms or whatever. So when I was at the end of finishing my law degree, that was 1999, and that was my worst year. That was my worst year where I was like carried out of like every club. Here is a that's an artist's impression actually of what what that it was like. It was terrible. Every club I was carried out, and it really was a cry for help. I mean, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't want to do this. I didn't want to do an interview or anything, and I was like, time was ticking as well. I was getting older. So what happened? All my friends who were doing law were like saying, "What are you going to, which they were doing cadetships, which is like internships." I just, when I finished my degree, I got into a codependent relationship with someone who was taking drugs, and I just hid myself like that. I really had no, I had no plan other than avoidance. And so basically for the next, and this is the second part of the secret, is what happened was for the next 19 years, I didn't work. I hid. I took drugs. I basically avoidance, right? It's funny when you're in a drug world, that becomes the like all your life and all the problems that you have are just in that little world. It becomes about this person, screwed you over, this person ripped you off, and that becomes your life. It's just you have a new set of problems that sort of replace, what is really the problem. It's just classic avoidance. So what happened? So I did that for 19 years. And you might be wondering, how on earth did I survive if I wasn't working? Now, this is the other thing. Part of why the anthropophobia is so terrible was that actually going to Centrelink was a problem. So I never went to Centrelink, except for one time when I came back from America. I actually saved up some money from Austudy. I had some Austudy, which I was entitled to. I saved up some money. And when I came back, I did apply for about 3 weeks or 4 weeks to Centrelink, and I got, like, for about a month, I got the dole. But that was just before I started my law degree, and then I went back to doing that. But this was part of the fear. I couldn't actually go to Centrelink because this was my fear, to tell a stranger what was going on, and to have them judge me. And I just couldn't do it. And so I didn't even, so for all this time, I've never accepted the dole. I've lived on nothing. It's funny, when I was with Adam, he used to say, he used to complain about my ex. He used to complain about, you don't know how tough it is to live, be able to limited income. So yeah, I do actually. The reason why he thought that was because this is the other part of the secret, is that, people would ask me, what did I do for a living? And I would make something up. It was more, I just wanted them to just don't ask me that question. Next question, please. It was kind of a bit like that. So what was interesting is that, a lot of it, this is the thing about this secret, and very much like, those people who can't read, I really identify very, very heavily with that, because it affects every aspect of your life. There isn't a part of your life in which this doesn't become, a major part that you always have to consider. You're always working around this thing, right? And that's exactly what I did here. My phobia turned into so many other problems because of avoidance. I just couldn't face it. I couldn't deal with it. I didn't know how. I couldn't talk to anyone. I felt every exit was blocked. I couldn't talk to anyone. I couldn't even get like a doctor, a counselor. It was like I couldn't do it. And even getting financial support, I couldn't even do that. I couldn't get work, nothing. All I was doing was taking drugs, getting older, and really, um, I was dreadfully unhappy. But it was, it's interesting. My mum said to me recently, because she knows, everyone knows, all the relevant parties know. She was saying, that you were having a pretty good time, when, the past few years or whatever. And I said, is that what you think? And I said, it's the suffering has been that I've had to live my life like on pause the whole time. I've never been able to do anything fully. Everything's been held back like this, right? Always held back. Everything's been held back. And it's very much like there's people who couldn't read, and they must have felt like that too. There's so much that they feel they can't do, and because you have to attend this ridiculous, this horrible fear, this cage that I built myself. There were reasons for it. Like everyone who has a phobia has a reason for it. There's always some kind of origin story, right? And that was the same with me. But it's amazing the power of the mind that can build this cage. There's also the power of the mind that can also release it. People who feel so trapped by how the strong grip that it has, should recognize this is the same mind that can also release it and also create a better life for yourself, right? If you can find a way, it has the same power. It has the power to grip you, it has the power to release you, and also has the power to create, a better life for yourself. That's how powerful it is. As powerful as it feels when it grips you is just as powerful as it can be when it's being positive and doing something good, right? Anyhow, so what happened? So I never accepted money. What you might be wondering what I did for money. Now it's kind of interesting. People who live in a drug world will know this, and I'm not saying anything that I don't know if people know this. Sooner or later, everyone loses their job, right? I never even had one. Right? So, but people sooner or later lose their job, and so there's only three options available to them. You either become a dealer, a prostitute, or a scammer, or a combination of any of those, right? Now, for those who are wondering, I didn't become any of those, right? I'm sure that's what people thought. I must have been, or, I'm sure that people suspected. I do. I mean, it's interesting. Some of the codependent relationships I was in were, they're always drug fueled, and I wanted to be with these people, but I wouldn't have been. Yeah. Anyhow, I'll leave that. But so what did I do? My mum actually was nice enough to give us three children some money that we were meant to use to grow and use as a deposit for a house or something. Of course, my brother and my sister did the right thing, and they used it in the appropriate way. I, of course, was living off that money. Now, it wasn't a lot of money, by the way. It's just like to say that but this was kind of when I say I was like imprisoned, it was poverty thinking has a new level with me. I never had anything. I couldn't do anything. Money at least enables you to have, gives you opportunity. You can do things, that you want to do, whatever. I never had money. I had to always be very, very careful about what I had because I didn't have it, and that there was none coming in, right? I would live on nothing. And what did that mean? That meant that I couldn't do things. That meant I had to not do a lot of things that people take for granted. Basically living. I mean, I did things that were for free. I would watch films on TV, get stuff from the library. I would read books. I would pursue my own. That's what I did for all that time, was that I pursued my own kind of interest that I started at uni, actually. I was reading books about film. I was seeing more films, but not spending money. All the things that were for free from a library, right? I'm pursuing my own arts interest. But it didn't just affect that area. It also affected, all of my relationships. Every relationship I was in, I could never make a proper offer to anyone, right? I knew that, they were working and stuff, and I always misled them because they would ask, what do you do? And I would just say something, and I should have been honest with them, but then that would have been accompanied by a lot of other questions. And the way I saw it, most of them were just, I always thought that they'd be one night stands. I'm like, who cares? The way I saw it was, I can't even talk to myself about this. Why am I going to tell you the truth when I can't even say it to myself? And this is the other thing. Every time, I knew what I was doing was terrible and out of control. And I knew it was leading to this horrible life where it was completely impoverished life where I just couldn't get, is it a failure to launch? Is that film? Very simple. That's a comedy, but this was like, yeah, it's sort of funny. No, it's tragic. But I couldn't, it just affected every aspect, including love. And so, what would happen would be, every time I met someone, if I liked them, at a certain point, I knew I'd have to withdraw because they couldn't get too close. No one could get too close because I was hiding the secret. And so I was thinking that part of what was going to happen with this life was not only, that love was going to pass me by, because I couldn't be myself. There was always this very important thing that was holding me back, and that I couldn't be open and honest. And this is the thing. It's like that is actually my natural. That's the way I like to be. I like to be open and frank. Part of the reason why I'm doing this is precisely because of that. If anyone wants to date me, still single, we'll see after this. I would have to. One of the first questions they ask is, "What do you do?" And so I'm saying now I'm not working, right? And hopefully, I'm hoping that there is no answer, no follow-up question, because otherwise I'd have to go through this whole explanation with each person. And the way I see it now, that it's a matter of public record, I said just have a look. There's a full explanation of what happened if you're interested. And people do Google search you when they're interested or whatever. So I know that happens. So thank God. It's like, oh, I don't want to have to go through this again and again. It's like, on the record, I'm releasing it now. I'm releasing it from myself, from the burden of it. And it's been a heavy burden. But it's also for everyone just to know. And again, this is actually my natural state of being, is just to be open and honest and frank, and sort of just the flow. There's a flow, open channel. Is kind of, I say what's on my mind and what I think about people, but without any kind of inhibiting factors, or try not to. And this is the difficulty. I think my mum didn't really understand, or the others, was just how much I've had to hold myself back. It really, in a way that really was eating me up inside. I was hanging in there, but to say that my spirit was broken, that was the part that really broke my spirit, because it's not who I am, and I suffered greatly because of it. I hated lying. I hated it every time I did it, and I just couldn't think about it. I just couldn't think about it. Every time the thought came close to me, I would, just run away from it. I didn't know what I was going to do. I couldn't even think about it, let alone say something to anyone, let alone talk to someone who could not possibly help me. These possibilities seemed so far in the distance. I just didn't know what I was going to do. I was just floundering. Like, I was just lost the whole time. I would pray. And I would say, if you give me a second chance. Wait a second. Too much. Too much. Thank you. Yeah, that lines it. That's better. I would pray if I ever got a second chance, I would grab it with two hands. That was the promise, and that's what I was, and I meant that, because at this stage I was praying for a miracle. I was looking for a lotto win, even just like 10, 30,000, just something. At a certain point I thought maybe I could start a business, but I didn't know what. I was just had nothing. There was nothing there. So what happened? 19 years I was hanging in there. I managed to live on nothing for a really long time, and I was surviving. It was like those people who can't read, who were just hanging in there, I guess. Then I met Adam, right? And that's when everything changed. So that was in 2019 when I met Adam. And I'm going to talk about this a bit because I think it's important. I've written a lot of things that are cryptically in the stuff that I've written in my Facebook page, of some of the articles I've written about what actually happened, and when I left him, what that really meant. And I don't think people really understand understand exactly the gravity of what it was that I was leaving. when I left him, when I met him, I was in this terrible position. And when, when I fell in love with him very quickly, if people are spiritualists out there will know what twin flames are. We were definitely twin flames. And the reason, what that is that, if people know this, you have past lives, you come back again and again. And you often run into the same people again and again. It's sort of like same script, different actor. No, same actors, different scripts, kind of that scenario. And how you know it is because you will have a reaction when you are with that person in their energy field that's really not like anyone else's. Adam would touch me on my ass. And he would have and I've got to be honest, he's done a lot of people. He would have a reaction, and so would I. It's not just that you desire each other, it's something much more deeper, profound, like it triggers some memory or something that is so fascinating, you become obsessed with it. It's like, wait, what is this? This is not normal. That's how you know. And we had extraordinary, he knows as well as I do what happened in that relationship. I don't know if anyone really understands. It was just bonkers. It was great, but it was fucking mental. Anyhow, so meeting him also meant the reason why, there was a reason why we met each other, and it was explained to us by spirits later, but sorry, it was with meeting him, because he's quite psychic, it really awakened my spiritual side. That's because I was always very, let's say, sensitive. I can read people. I can read people's energy. There's a neighbor here who every time she comes out, it's like the ugliest. This is always, I've always felt this. It's like fumes coming out. It's ugly. It's ugly, and it's like I feel sick. And I'm not trying to be insulting. I have a physical. I can feel it. I can sense what the energy is. It ain't pretty. But that's the extent of my sort of my psychic spiritual abilities, was just that. But meeting him really opened everything up. Okay. Meeting him, we talked to the spirits around about a year into it. Actually, he never told me he was psychic until about a year into the relationship. Up until then, we were having our own kind of crazy experience, and it was drug fueled. But I know people think that was the only reason why it happened. It really wasn't. If I can just say quickly, ever since I've left him, I've stopped using everything, and I'm more in contact with my spirit. I can talk to my guides better now than I ever did while I was high. So that's not a correlate. There's not a correlation between the two. But anyhow, so what happened? The mission. All right. So there was a couple of things. I don't know if people, I'm sure people will want to ask questions. We went, I will say very briefly, we did go to spiritual court. There is such a thing as spiritual court. You don't have spiritual judgment, sorry. You don't have to be dead when you get judged. The judgment can happen at any point in your life, by the way. And you can call judgment. It does exist. It's like Judge Judy up in the sky. It's quite funny. And they said to us, there was something about our relationship and something they wanted to show us. It was actually me. The whole thing was about me. They wanted me to visit spiritual judgment because there was something they wanted me to see. Right? It was very important. I can't go into it because I'll tell you something. They said, don't tell anyone about this. About a week, as soon as I got home, I told my mom, I couldn't help it, And then when I went back to see Adam, they told me off. They said, we said to you, you're not allowed to tell anyone. I'm sorry, but I didn't tell her the word. I didn't tell her the nitty gritty of that. I just told her that there is a spiritual court and yes, there's a God, all that sort of stuff. I thought she'd be interested. She's very religious, my mom. But anyhow, I'm digressing. So what happened with Adam and me? The mission, right? There is a video in which I talk about there was a mission that was given to us. I'm going to talk a little bit about it, but not too much, right? We were led to go to La Perouse. He got the message. We went, and he just found it like a sniffer dog. It's really funny. He said, not here. Here, this is the spot. We didn't realize at the time, but I better not say that actually. We found the spot, and a particular after we used to go there and have sex, basically. And afterwards, there was like post-coital. You get downloads when you have sex afterwards. It's like that post-coital high and stuff, and everyone's relaxed and stuff, and things come through. All the spirits came through. And they told us why. They said, we're really glad that you're here. Okay. We've been trying to get you two together since 1999. And I went, really? So 1999 would have been perfect for me. That was the year that I was like, you know, that one. That was that year. That was 1999, where I was just taking too many drugs. It would have been absolutely perfect because I was graduating that year. I didn't know what to do. If I met him, they would have given me this purpose. It would have been absolutely fantastic. But as it was, I went down a drug, haze for 19 years actually. But here we are, 19 years later. We got you back. Finally, we're glad we got you back together. We got you together. They actually said something very interesting where they said, we were worried there for a while that you two weren't going to meet at the right time. There was a particular point at which you two had to meet, and they never told us what it was. But I really think it was COVID, because we met 6 months before COVID broke out, and then were lockdowns here in Australia. If I had met him during or any time from the beginning of COVID, I wouldn't have. It wouldn't have happened. We had to have that 6 months where we were like together, and by that stage, I was in love and I was locked in. And we were in lockdown. I would sneak out and carry drugs. By the way, ooh, I was always so scared the coppers were going to get me. And I carried quite a bit. Sneaking out to other suburbs that you weren't supposed to, and I only did that because I was in love with him, and I felt like this wasn't just a normal relationship. It wasn't just because I wanted to have sex with him. It was like I was really in love, and there was more. There was stuff. So anyhow, what happened was when we went there, the mission. There was a very clear demarcation about this mission, right? It was like, Martin, you're going to dry, Adam, you're going to wash, right? The way it was just very clear, like clearly divided, right? I was nothing. I was the little lady behind the man, right? It was all about Adam. This whole thing was about Adam. Like he was a star. And if you know Adam, he's a very charismatic person. He really is. People are drawn to him. He has a magnetism. He really does. And I could see it, right? I could see he's a star. He's a star. They gave us a mission that was actually one I really believed in. Now it'll take me too long to talk about it, but I'm just going to leave it like that. It was a mission that I really believed in, and I was more than happy to be on board. They said, Martin, you're going to write everything. Adam's a star, public face. Martin, you're going to write everything. I said, brilliant. I said, I couldn't believe it. The reason why I'm mentioning it is for people to understand what this mission meant. Here I was 48, never worked. I was just taking drugs. I was on my back taking drugs, right? Begging. I had all this education. I have all this, this is the other thing. I'm just going to do a quick aside. My father called me a loser when I told him. And I totally understand that. And what he meant by that was, I'm going to clean it up a bit. What he meant by that was, it was someone like you, someone like me. And what he means is like, I don't have a learning disability. I have talent. I have enough talent. I have enough ability. I have enough smarts, ability, and higher education to all the elements that you would expect someone to have done something good with their life. My brother and my sister both had very successful lives, right? That's something that it's not like I had learning disability or, any kind of, handicap like that. I guess I was handicapped in a different way, in a way that no one knew or could see. But because I can come across well, I think that everyone thought I was fine, right? And I do want to relate this a bit to gay men, because I think gay men are very good at that. I do. I think they develop skills when they're younger to kind of, to get people to like them, because they're always worried about being rejected, I think, by their parents or something. And so they can develop a show. It's like they can be funny, personable, erudite. They're always good at things, the best cooks and the best whatever. You know what I mean? They're away, and people think that they get you get your self-esteem where you can get it from. This is certainly not a criticism. This is like, it's fantastic that they do this, but I do understand that in many ways I did the similar thing. And this is the deception, is that people think that they're fine because that outwardly they come across really well. They don't seem like there's anything wrong, but this is the thing that it's like Mrs. Delaware by Virginia Woolf. She used to throw the best parties. She was the hostess with the mostest, and like everyone thought, oh, she's fabulous. She was dying inside. No one stopped to think or ask her why was she so driven to throw these fabulous parties. Everyone thought she was fantastic. Oh, isn't she great? Meanwhile, she was barely hanging in there. I think there's a lot in that. I think with gay men. I don't know. That's what I think. I'll be very interested to see whether people think that or not. But anyhow, I'm digressing. So the mission, right? Martin, I was going to write everything. And this is the other thing. I thought, finally, here I was, 48, never worked, taking drugs, and I was praying for a miracle. And what happened? The man that I love, there was a position that was given to me on a plate. That's what I was praying for. That was exactly what I was praying for. He came along with a position. It was a job, actually. I know that sounds strange, but it really was a job. It was a mission, but it was a job and it was paid. And now I'm going to explain this very briefly how it was paid. And people think, how can that be paid? Is that there was a lot of promises that was associated with this mission, right? This is what I'm going to say. There are going to be some spirituals out there go, that's not right. And it's more complicated. What I'm about to say, it's more complex than that. But I'm just going to say what we were told, and this is what I believe. They said, there was a lot. We said we can help you win the lottery if we want. It's like they could give you stock market tips. They know what's going to happen. They can help you like that. Now they're not supposed to, but at the time I believed it, and there was money coming. There was like this promise. I just believed it all. It's going to be paid. There was going to be enough for you. All you have to do is be with Adam, do this mission. And I believed in the mission. I thought, here I was, and I thought, isn't that amazing? Here I was all this time, so long. I was lost boy, praying for a miracle. And what happened? A miracle happened. Everything sort of, I thought, this is all my prayers answered at once. And this is what happened with Adam. That there's another part. We were meant to do this mission, and all we did was take more drugs and have sex and didn't do anything. I was getting really anxious about it because this is the other part that I have to add. I was doing fine with living off the sum of money my mum gave me. But then when I met Adam, that's when COVID happened and the price of drugs went up like 2 to 3 times. And now meth is sort of expensive anyhow. And the amount that I was paying for both of us, by the way. Adam was working, but also had to pay child support. He really didn't have a lot of spare income. And I didn't think that when I met him, I didn't think it was, I thought it was, I might see him a few times or whatever. That's sort of how I operated at the time. I didn't think that what would happen. And so, I found myself in a bind where I had promised, I said from the start, look, I'll pay for everything. And I was sort of had to stick with that because I couldn't get out of that promise, without that's just the corollary explanation of why that was the case. And I was lying to him, that I was working and I had the money. I got them up. This is the other part of the secret. I stole the money from my mum. In the end, it was just meant to be a bit here and there. And my mum's savings account, I had access to it. And in the end, we were together 3.5 years. At the end of it, I took $65,000. It was really bad. I know. She knows. All the relevant parties know. I shouldn't laugh, but all the relevant parties have been told. And she's actually, for anyone who's interested, the debt has been forgiven. Of course, I'm going to pay it back. I told her recently, look, the only reason I didn't do it, I wouldn't do this for anyone, right? I really believed in what we were doing. I thought it was blessed by God. I thought what we were doing was right and that it would all work out. I said, how can it not? It's like these powers above. It's like they can do this. This is, what I didn't realize, I'm just going to be very brief about this part. What I didn't realize is, yes, there were spirits involved, but, there are 2 kinds of spirits. There's 2 sides, right? I kept thinking, it's really interesting that we've got this mission. Who should we be looking out for? Like, there's always the baddies, right? Who are the dark forces? And there was never any talk of that. That's kind of strange. And the way I see it now is that we had access to both. What happened in the end, and I don't care what he thinks, but I'm going to say it. Adam was really captured by the darker side, and they were trying to bring me down with him. And I didn't really realize it, to be honest. It was subtle, and that was where the drugs came in, because the drug haze really was part of that, of bringing you down it breaks his spirit. It becomes like the addiction has its own legs. It has its own momentum. And instead of doing less, we did more and more. And I was more and more unhappy, and I was using more and more of my mum's money. So in the end, it was 65,000. It was just terrible. He didn't know, by the way. So he thought I was getting the money legitimately. It was not his fault. But I have to be honest, a bit of a pig. Every time I said, can we use less? It was always ended up being more every time. But I can't blame him. It takes two to tango, and I folded quicker than, I folded way too quickly. He can be very convincing sometimes. But anyhow, so I was in deep. I was putting all my bets on this. I had everything bet on. I was sure about it, but then it started turning awry. There were forces that were entering into our relationship that I just didn't like. Some spirits that weren't there at the beginning. In the beginning, it was completely different. And I know those energies, and the ones that were there at the end were not those energies. They were low vibrating, dark, other side, to be honest. And I remember I sort of got wind of it. And I remember saying to Adam, I don't know about you, but I'm not doing anything wrong. I don't care. I'd rather be crack whore living on the fucking street than I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm telling you right now, I will leave this, and I will encourage you to do the same. In fact, I said, if you go on with this, I will actually expose you. I was like really serious. I thought, I wasn't sure where it was going anymore. It wasn't going nowhere really slowly. But that's how I felt. And that's part of the reason why, I felt like I had to leave. And so that what this is all about, why I'm bringing Adam into it, is I don't think people understand exactly what it was that I was leaving. I was leaving, not obviously not with anyone there, but I was leaving not just the man that I loved. I was leaving this was the answer to this terrible mess that I had made for 30 years. There was an answer here. And I know people don't really think, oh, this is airy-fairy. No, this was a real answer, right, for me. And when I walked away from him, I walked away from not just the man that I love, but this whole, answer to my prayers, because it was attached to him. And when I walked away from him, it's classic fools, people that follow tarot, it's classic fool's journey. It's a leap of faith into off a cliff. You have no idea what's going to happen. And I had there was no promise of anything. I just knew that I had to get out. It just wasn't what I signed up for. I wasn't going to go down that path. And I just thought, you know what? And I was running out of money. That sort of did help, but it was like, that was the main reason was I wasn't going to go down that path. So what did I do? So very first time I told anyone, the whole thing was Adam. And like I was saying before, I was using a lot of meth, and that was actually the last time I used it. Was when I told him, and he was really upset. And he said, "You mean you've been lying to me all this time?" I said, "Yes, I have. I'm really sorry. There was a reason. It started as this thing." I said, "And I've never told anyone this. I've never told anyone this before." He was really upset. But then I said to him, "Have you got something to tell me?" Because I knew he was cheating on me. There was someone else, and he was just playing me the whole time. I sort of got wind of what was going on. I thought, this is bullshit. I'm out of here. But this is the problem. What did I leave to? There was no promise of nothing. What I left was a much worse position than what I'd started. I was older. I was, still in the same position. No work, no nothing, no prospects. I mean, what was I going to tell a fucking job interviewer? What have you done the last few years? That take drugs and line on my back. I know how to inject without leaving a mark. I mean, that's pretty. That's pretty good. Actually, in the community, that's considered a highly prized skill. But yeah, obviously, you can't. It's not really good for a job interview. Anyhow, so that's what I was leaving, and I did. And to what? And now added to that was a $65,000 debt. It was worse. This is what happened. That's when I left him and I got home. All the spirits came through and they congratulated me. And I was saying, what? I said, oh, you don't know what you've done. You've finally broken the generational curse that your family, female line, has been under. All of them were in codependent relationships, like my mom, for example, and her grandmother, mother, auntie, all of them. There's like 9, there's heaps of women on my mother's side of the family. And they'd all, and I know them, they all stayed in codependent relationships that they should have left because they felt bound by it. And by me taking that leap, it was a big deal. I actually ended that. And there was a lot of congratulations from to me. And that's actually when the healing began. That's when, and I know people like, that's why I'm at this point now. That was the 6th of November. That was the very first time I said any of this to Adam. And I was getting high when I was doing, I had to get Dutch courage, right? Because it gives you confidence. I'm doing it today, 4 months later, about 4 months later. And I'm not on anything, I'm having some water, whatever. And not only, I've told all my friends and family, they know, but now I'm making it a matter of public record. It is very much like that show with Jay Lagaya, with those people who couldn't read who went on that show. Because, for me, it is humiliating to let everyone know just like they did. But for me, it's more importantly, it's a release. I'm finally releasing this thing that has gripped me. Like those people, it affected my life in every aspect of my life was affected. And I couldn't, I was a slave to it. Like I was saying earlier, how powerful the mind is. This is a prison that I made myself, where I kept myself stuck, never left. I'm still with my parents because I can't. I'm 50. This is the thing. I'm 50, still with my parents, not working, no prospects, no nothing. Now $65,000 worth of debt, and a secret that I couldn't even say to myself up until the 6th of November when I said it to Adam first time. It took they helped me in 3 or 4 days. They helped me get to the point where I could tell him. I mean, it was the Tuesday I got home after seeing him. By the Thursday, I was ready to tell him. And so I told him on the Sunday. People, I don't know, I've had some friends who think, oh, he's crazy or whatever. So you can say whatever you want. But in 4 months, they managed to, I've done it by myself. I've had no contact with anyone. Like, I've seen no doctor. No one knows. I've done this completely. The 4 corners of this room, me and the spirits who are here, are the ones who have helped me. And they don't tell you what to do. They just encourage you what to do. They encourage you actually just to do, what to do. And it took me this long to actually figure it out. They were actually saying for a while, there's something you need to release. And I said, what? Just tell me, I'll do it. But they can't do that. There is such a thing called free will. They can't tell you, do this and this will happen, right? That'd make everything easier, right? That's what I was begging for. I said, no, we can't. They don't even say they can't do that. They just can't. You have to figure it out, and then you have to act on it. And that's what I'm doing today. This is a great release for me. And for me, it's like I finally feel unburdened by it. I feel like I'm back to being that boy when I was 9, before the attack, and before the cage of fear really started to engulf me. It started small, but it got worse. It's been a long time, 40 years. And it changed over time. It didn't stay the same. But it was the same in terms of like keeping me stuck in this room, 4 corners of this room. Lots happened in this room. But I feel that by saying it, by confessing to it and really releasing it, I feel unburdened. And I'm back to where I was. It's like, it's not like the 40 years haven't happened, but I feel released from it finally. It's out in the open. It's out. I'm owning it. This is the other part. Take control of the secret and take control of the narrative, take control of your life. I want to talk about something very briefly. I have a neighbor who hates my guts. And there's been, she used to fight my father, now she fights me. Right? I've written about it in Cinebrings versus the rest of the world. She comes up a lot. We call her Amanda because she looks like Amanda. That's how you say it. Anyhow, I had a fight with her where, she's really scary. She's the scariest thing I've ever seen in my life. She would scare Mike Tyson. I'm not joking. She drags a knuckle. A scary person. I've never met a man more aggressive than her. Nothing is more aggressive than that thing. And I will say this, actually. Anyone who's awakened or spiritualist, and they'll know what I mean. This is for them. They'll know what I mean. That is not human. That's all I'm going to say. I know that. I know. Anyhow, I know this because she challenged me to a fight. She, scares my mum. My mum is losing her faculty. My mum's 83. And the reason why it was so easy for me to deplete her of her funds was that she doesn't remember stuff and she's getting scared. As you know, anyone who gets older gets, when they lose their confidence, when they they lose their confidence because what they used to do easily, now they can't do anymore, and it makes them scared. So this woman really scares her. She's like a bulldog. She comes across really aggressive and scary, bad, like I said, bad energy. And I told her, can you please stop harassing my mum? If you have something to say, please say it to me or say it to my father. She doesn't talk to me or my father. She's not doing whatever I want. And she came within 1 centimeter of my face. I'm not exaggerating. Basically challenged me to a fight for her right to harass my mum who's losing her faculties. It was unbelievable. Oh, she breathed on me. Oh my God, I could die. It was like halitosis as hell. It was just revolting. And looking into those dead eyes, it's like, oh, fuck. Anyhow, yeah, I've got an honest impression. There we go. Yeah, that's Mighty Monster, by the way. But it actually, I think it's quite a good likeness. I think that's actually been quite generous. She wishes she looks like that. Anyhow, so when that happened, afterward, I said, please, she said, she threatened to bash me. She said, I said, look, if you do this again, I'm going to I'm going to knock on the door and tell you, she goes, if you come up properly, I'm going to bash you. Was like, get a baseball bat and bash the shit out of you. She threatened me, whatever. About 3 weeks ago, she came back. She looks around and makes sure no one's around. My mum told me this story. She always makes sure, she's very cunning, and also another word that runs it, cunning. She looked around and made sure that no one was around. And she tells her off. And she said, she's obviously found what, I've gone public with all my stuff. And she's obviously found it on Facebook or whatever. She said, you should be ashamed of your son. My mum packs up her bag and, she was gardening and comes back inside the house on her own property. Because we don't have a fence there, you can have access to it. She's really vindictive. She really wants to use any information that she can against me. She's starting a smear campaign. Why am I bringing this up? Take control of the secret, take control of the narrative, take control of your life. If I hadn't confessed to all of this, and if she had found this out by some other means, and I've told other people, I guess it's possible, she would have used this, she would have weaponized it. And to be honest, if she had weaponized this against me, I would have gone several steps backwards. As it is, I am taking what I feel like I'm doing, and I am doing it. I'm taking control of this thing by owning it, by releasing it. No one, she can't, I don't care what people say. People can say whatever they want. I'm fine with that. Believe me, everything that they think and that is legitimate. But if someone wanted, it takes the sting out of being able to weaponize it, basically. And I know that she's probably watching this, and she's probably, she goes around starting a smear campaign. I saw her not so long ago. I was getting out of the water and I was in the park, and she was giving me evils like this. She's giving me the evil eye, right? The whole time I was walking, she just keep it on like that. And I was thinking, you know what? You're too ugly to pull off that face. Like, seriously. Meanwhile, I'm 50. The point is this, get on with your own life. We don't care about you. And I think it's really heinous, to be honest. You've harassed, makes you feel like a big man to harass an old lady who's losing her mind, someone with social anxiety. Right. Anyhow, enough of her. But, yeah, that's the final word. But this is the point. If you don't tell, let's just say, the relevant parties, you don't have to go and do a YouTube confession, right? Although I wouldn't mind if people came on the show. I will protect your identity. This is about mental health. I would absolutely protect your identity, right? I was thinking I have a slide here. Oh, no. There we go. I would absolutely protect your identity in terms of, if you wanted to be anonymous or whatever, if you don't feel comfortable, that's perfectly fine. We also had the idea of hand puppets. We'll find a way in which you can, if you want to come here and talk about something, it doesn't have to be confessional. You can just be talking about things that you know about, like, for example, PNP community. There are various things. They're shedding the light here. shedding a light on the shadowy aspects of gay life. And it's not just gay life, it's actually LGBTQ, anyone really. But I'm going to start with what I know, which is this. This is, I've spent a lot of years in the trenches. What was I doing? All the, it was anthropological work, if I can be frank with you. I was taking notes as I was saying. It's true, in the sense that I was always very interested in what was going on with people. And I've got to say this, I feel a lot of kinship with my gay brothers, in the sense of, what I was doing, I had a very specific phobia and I was dealing with it a very specific way, but there was a lot I sensed, a lot of similarities with a lot of these guys that I encountered. And I would say with a lot of the community, there is things inside that they're hiding, that they do a really great job in getting through the day and getting through their life. But I really sense the same kind of sense of escape, putting their bodies at risk with risky behaviors. The PNP scourge now, I think, is really that's what that's about. And it breaks my heart. It absolutely breaks my heart. There, before the grace of God goes on, that was me. That was me 4 months ago. It's only been 4 months that I've managed to get to this point with the help of my guides, which is, but part of the reason why I'm saying this is that I'm hoping that anyone who has a secret, maybe from childhood, I don't know, that's often where it starts. A lot of people feel that they're fine. Oh, I dealt, that was ages ago. I've dealt with it. Really, if you have patterns of behaviors that if you're unhappy, if, you keep attracting the wrong person, if you keep, getting into relationships with people that just screw you over. I mean, this is a sign that maybe you haven't quite dealt with it. There are different levels of this, of course. And I know I was speaking to someone on Facebook who was talking about something that happened when they were younger, and they said, I just can't face, I can't. I try, but I can't. And look, that was me. That was me. I totally get it. But like I was saying earlier, it's the power of the mind is really quite extraordinary. The same mind that had the power to entrap you and keep you stuck where you feel that there's no way out is the same power of the mind that can actually release you and actually create a life that you would actually like. It's the same mind. It's just how it's used and how it's channeled. It's possible. I'm just saying, you know what it's like if you're in that position, and I did, you know what it's like to be burdened by that power, right? Where you feel like you got, it's strong. That fear is strong. It feels like you cannot move, like cement boots. But that is an indication of exactly how powerful the mind is, but in the negative. But it's also the converse is true. You can release yourself from it because it's just as powerful in doing that, more so even. And part of the reason and what I'm hoping for when I've said all of this is actually for people to think a little bit about the secret in their life that they feel might have gripped them. And if you've shut that door, that you think that you can't do anything about it, that it's like it's too hard, I can't face it. I really would just ask that people just leave it a little bit ajar and just leave it as a possibility. Well, I don't know how. Don't know what I'm going to do. This was my line for a long time. But, I'm going to leave the possibility, maybe someday something can happen. Maybe, something will happen. Just leaving it a bit open is better than just slamming it. I just can't. Leave out, I just can't. And just leave it a little bit open and see what happens. Because, part of, this is my release. I'm really thrilled. I'm very happy about it. And I've done it in 4 months, which isn't bad. I'm saying this because it can be done, and I did it by myself actually. I would really like to have a show. I really want to try and help people if I can. And whatever you've done, look what I've done. Look what I've done. You don't think I'm embarrassed about what I've done? For me, also part of the embarrassment was like a lot of when I told people, it's just not what you would expect from how I come across. It's almost the opposite, right? And there was a pride involved too with me. That was part of the humiliation. I feel humiliated for such a long time. Saying it is humiliating, but it's released. It's done.
I'm glad it's done. And I am moving forward. If people are wondering what I'm going to do now, right? Well, this is it. I feel like I've won already in the sense that I'm getting back to who I was before the trauma when I was 9. That kid was really powerful stuff. That kid was fearless. That kid had talent. I've still got it. But what's interesting, what I've added now is this experience that's been very, very taxing on me. But I've learned I've learned a lot from all of this. It's taken me in a direction that I would like to use it and help, if I can, other people who have got it. I do understand what it's like to be in this position. These aren't just words. This is actual experience that I can relate to, and not that long ago. It's not like a distant memory. Yeah. So anyone who feels that like they can't, I'd really like to talk to you. And I don't know. I'm hoping that this confession has done something to sort of open that door. Maybe you feel that you can do it. I would love it. Nothing more. Okay. So that's the show. Let's see, is everything? Yeah. That's all for now. I'm going to end it. So it's an hour. What is it? Hour is it? But I'm going to end it now. I might do. Let's see. We might do. Yeah, it's all over. Yes, thank you, Janet. All right. It is getting a bit long. I'm gonna end it there. I might do a follow-up where if people have questions, because I really had to get it out because I was really nervous and stuff. And now I've done it, it's like good. But if I take questions now, it'll take too long. But I might do another follow-up where I'll just look at if you have any other further questions, it'll be more interactive the next time, because I don't know if anyone's going to want to come on the show. I might just have to, well, that'll be the show. I'll just tell more about what I've spoken about. Okay. So that's the end. We're calling time. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining me and, being part of, well, for me, it's a big deal. I've released this thing and now I feel really good. I'm going to take some drugs and have some drinks. I'm kidding. All right. I love you all. Where is that? Have a great day, everyone. I love you all. And we'll see you again soon. All right.